Good afternoon, everyone. Coming to you live, 30 feet underground, is the Unelectoral College podcast. I am Austin.
And I am Carson.
And today, on our episode, Stockholm Citizen, where we cover the kidnapping plot of Governor Whitner, voter suppression, conspiracy theories that you might have heard, and the vice presidential debate. So, why don't you get us started on the vice presidential debate topic that we have selected for this week?
Yeah, so the vice presidential debate was held in Utah over this last week. We did not get to go. We tried our best, it went better than the presidential debate. Still wasn't great. I think the Fly was honestly the best candidate.
Oh man, the Fly. I have heard nothing but this stupid Fly for 5 days now. I have seen no important news except for this dumb Fly and whatever stupid things people on Twitter or whatever are saying about this stupid Fly.
Well, I mean, flies do like to eat on pieces of shit, so
yeah, I've heard that one already too. You did it.
I did do it.
You've defeated Michael Pence.
If only.
So, the 6 topics of the debate. We start off with COVID, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of what we have to start with nowadays. Pence's plan talked about how they were doing a good job. And the first thing that I took from it, that I thought was kind of bad on Senator Harris's part, right, is Pence was talking about how their plan was very similar to that of Joe Biden's plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then on Harris's turn to speak, she mentioned that the plan didn't work, was not good enough, which I thought was weird, seeing as Pence had just likened it to Joe Biden's plan.
Well,
and I don't think the plan worked in general.
You got to remember too that Trump and Pence are these fake news creators. So of course Pence is going to say things like, oh yeah, our plan is exactly the same as Joe Biden's. Joe Biden doesn't have a plan. But if you go on Trump's website and goes to campaign policies, his campaign policy on COVID is to have a vaccine by the end of the year. How? Nobody knows. It doesn't say. If you go to Joe Biden's website, there's an actual plan written there. So you can't say the plans are the same when you don't even have a plan written down.
Well, I'm not saying that they're the same. I'm just saying Pence was saying they're the same, and you figure if they're not the same, Senator Harris would be like trying to distance herself from that, but she really didn't.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think Pence won that point, but I think he won it by lying.
Right.
He didn't win it by saying anything truthful. He just lied through his teeth and got away with it.
And here's what I want to say now. This is probably more fit for the end of the topic when we finish up with the VP debate, but I feel like, from my standpoint, this is mostly an even debate, right? But I feel like if you're left, you're going to think Senator Harris destroyed Mike Pence. And if you're from the right, you're going to think Mike Pence destroyed Senator Harris.
Yep.
They pretty much both came in there with that game plan that they needed to do. Mike Pence a little more urgent, maybe, in terms of what he needs to do to make up for what happened in the presidential debate, obviously. Mm-hmm. And they both pretty much got through what they planned to do, I think.
And we talked about it last episode with the actual presidential debate, how very few people actually watch it to inform themselves. It's a TV show.
Right.
The VP debate is even more of a TV show, because if you're just watching to inform yourself, you're going to watch the presidential. You're not going to watch the VP. So this was just the left riling up the left and the right riling up the right.
Both of them trying to talk to their bases, trying to maybe swing the independent voters up, be like, look at this, Just try to platform themselves a bit,
mm-hmm.
build themselves up. And I believe the second presidential debate's gone.
Yes.
Gone.
And Trump said that a long time ago, that he did not want to debate virtually. So this doesn't come as a surprise, but, it brings a lot of questions. How bad was his COVID? Because he's apparently able to go around and do all these rallies now, but he doesn't feel comfortable doing a virtual debate. So, does he just not want to debate Joe Biden? What's his goal here?
I mean, I feel like it's a free excuse out of it. Like,
That's
if
what
the
I'm
first
thinking
debate
too.
didn't go well, he'd just be like, I don't want to do the second one. I have this excuse. I have this, like, precedent of being like, I don't want to debate virtually.
Hmm.
And now that it's virtual, he has this easy, like, get out of debate free card where it's like, yeah, nah. I believe Joe Biden held a town hall instead, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yep. And then Trump had an actual physical rally.
Right. So ultimately, I don't really think it changed much compared to how a second debate would, because they're both just rallying at their base anyway. You figure with Trump at the rally.
Well, Trump's strategy, well, I shouldn't say strategy because he doesn't have strategy. He's just kind of stumbles through things. In 16, his goal was to control the news time. The more news time he controlled, the better he did. He doesn't need a debate to control news time.
Right.
So, like, the purpose of the debates last time in 16 was to give him more news coverage. Because all the news talked about after those debates in 16 was Trump said this, Trump said that, this is outrageous. And they didn't say anything about Hillary. Now, flash forward, they're not even covering Biden any still because Trump can control the news time. The difference between now and 16 is he doesn't need a debate to do it.
Right. So, anyways, getting back towards the vice presidential debate, I believe next on the ballot was healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, I think the one that hit the most flack was the Affordable Care Act during the debate, where Harris was basically saying things like, they're coming for you. And it really shouldn't come as too much as a shock that they're going after the Affordable Care Act. I mean, Trump has been saying, like, his entire campaign that he wants Obamacare gone. He said it during the primaries back in 2016. He wants to see it replaced with a private system. It's not really too much of a surprise.
But then Trump not Trump, Trump 2.0, Mike Pence, he lied through his teeth again, and he was like, we're not coming for the Affordable Care Act, we made it better, we did all these improvements, and he said that during the VP debate, and he's like, we want everybody to have their health care, and then Harris was like, so what's your plan? And of course the Republicans don't have one, because they don't have a plan.
I feel like you bring up that Pence lie. I feel like that's something they did a lot in the night. I feel like they both kind of did. Pence obviously more. Because I feel like Pence is just trying to not rile up anyone, but he's trying to, like, ease the ills of his base. You know what I mean?
Well, he's validating Trump because people
Right.
are like, oh, Pence is this professional, well-spoken person. I like Pence. Most of the Republican base likes Pence. They might not like Trump, but they like Pence. So if Pence says the same thing that Trump says, then all of a sudden what Trump is saying is true because Pence is a well-spoken man, so it has to
he's got the better demeanor. He's got the better speaking.
I will say, though, on my personal Facebook, I can also acknowledge, like you just did, that both candidates lied. But what gets me every time is, I guess Kamala misquoted an Abraham Lincoln quote. And I saw that everywhere on my Facebook page. So everybody's all up in arms that Kamala misspoke on Abraham Lincoln's quote. But then Mike Pence says, oh, yeah, we're not coming for Obamacare. And then Mike Pence says, oh, yeah, we have the perfect COVID-19 plan. Just read it on our website, and it's not there. And everybody is silent. It's all one-sided.
But I feel like that comes back. We've mentioned this before about Facebook
have.
versus, like, say, Twitter.
Yeah.
And that Facebook is obviously mostly
conservatives,
older conservatives. So, of course, when they see something about Abraham Lincoln, they're just like, wow, incredible thing.
Yeah.
The same thing about Twitter and the stupid goddamn fly. If you go on Twitter and you look for vice presidential debates, I guarantee you it's going to be all stupid fly things.
It was good.
It was not good. It was good in the moment. I'll give it that. But, like,
it just stayed
when I woke up each day and checked the news and saw this stupid fly every day, I was going to have a stroke.
This fly is the new Ken Bone.
Ken Bone. Remember, he's actually been in the now recently.
Yeah, he endorsed Joe Jurgensen.
Yeah, because he said something along the lines of that he was undecided and, like, Biden supporters harassed him and Trump supporters were nice to him or something. And then Biden supporters on Twitter harassed him on Twitter because, of course, Twitter, So that obviously doesn't help. But next up on the VP ballot, I think probably my favorite topic. Could the vice president step in if Trump or Biden ate it? Ate the big one. Neither of them really answered the question very well because nobody wants to talk about their partner dying.
No. And it would be a very... Kamala was not the favorite of the Democratic Party, or else she would have won the primary.
Right.
So Kamala doesn't want to say, I'm going to be president, because that's not a good look. And, Mike Pence is crazy, He's conversion camps, all this conspiracy theory stuff. He's just crazy, so he shouldn't be president either.
They both feel like movie villains to me, both VPs. They really just feel like Kamala's like a movie villain that's like less bad but still bad.
See,
and
I
Mike
love
Pence
Kamala.
is just a villain.
I think she's great.
I'm not a fan.
I know you wouldn't be, but I love her.
Got him. What was the next topic?
They did Supreme Court for a bit, didn't they?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
I presume so. Because, and this is the big takeaway I had for the night. Because I wanted to know, because Biden avoided the question because he just didn't want to answer it.
And then
which
Kamala
I thought was funny.
also avoided the question.
But Kamala dodged around the question. He wasn't like Biden, who was just like, I don't want to answer that. Which I thought was was pretty good. They dodged the idea of packing the court.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they know whether or not they want to pack the court, right?
They probably
But
do.
you can't go out and just say, like, we want to pack the court. Because then you have the people on your side of the base that don't want to pack the court, like, what the hell are you doing? What is this,
And then, some people justified voting for Trump in 2016 because of the Supreme Court.
Right.
If you can prove again, that they're going to pack the Supreme Court, then all of a sudden, we need Trump again to save the court again.
I feel like it kind of mimics, I think we mentioned this last week in the presidential debate, when Biden mentioned that he was not going to defund the police, which he said, but not on a stage like that. How much of the radical left does that isolate? That are like, we want to defund the police, But speaking of the police, and speaking of the FBI, let's talk about Governor Whitmer in Michigan, where a potential kidnapping plot by the Michigan militia, I did quotes in the air quotes, if you will, that was uncovered by the FBI.
What that's called?
Yeah, did you know?
I did not know. Wow.
What would you call them?
I was just making fun of you.
Yeah, I figured. Liberal.
Conservative.
Oh. Yeah, so the Michigan militia is what they're called, were plotting to kidnap Governor Whitaker, and they were obviously found out by the FBI themselves, came down and basically arrested, I don't remember how many people, 13 I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
They accused them of domestic terrorism, which is right.
Which I think is something important, because, we have this dual standard in America where, a lot of people think that to be a terrorist, you have to be Muslim, and that's just not the case. There's more white nationalists as terrorists in this country than Muslim terrorists.
Which makes sense.
Hundreds of times more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, but people are just afraid to call white people terrorists. And the fact of the matter is,
what's the difference?
Exactly. So these people are most definitely a terrorist organization, and people just are afraid to call them that because they're white. And, they're Trump supporters, and Amy Whitaker's a bad person, because she's prolonged the lockdown more than all these other governors. So, they were doing the right thing, and that's really a sad state to see in America, where people are out there supporting terrorists.
I agree with you on the part of them being terrorists. They're obviously terrorists.
Yeah.
They're planning to kidnap a government official. Like, what? Terrorism? Treason? Like, what? Put them in the guillotine.
Yeah.
But, saying Trump supporters was dishonest. They're anarchists. But the main reason I say that is because the main ringleader of not the Michigan militia, but this group that planned to kidnap Governor Whitmer, is anti-Trump, and he's outspoken, and he's on tape saying things like that. He says Trump's not your friend, guy, and
Mm-hmm.
like that he's proven over and over again that he's a tyrant. So I feel like there's not really a good political lean here because they're anarchists. This guy says this anti-Trump stuff with the anarchist flag in the background. I think politically they're just stupid. I don't really think they have a party.
I mean, anarchists are always just kind of
Dumb,
not the right way to go.
right? Because like, and
But the issue with them is like they're emboldening the Trump supporters, is what I was trying to say, because Whitaker has been the target of Trump because she's a Democratic governor who,
in a swing state.
in a swing state who's been doing all these COVID-19 things that he isn't doing. And, earlier this year they had those big protests outside of her house with armed guns and all that kind of stuff. So there's a reason why she's been the hot button person to target. And the Trump supporters are eating this up, I believe.
I'm pretty sure everyone's trying to eat this up, if you know what I mean. Like you said that the Trump supporters are being riled up. This is also riling up the left side of the base too.
Yeah,
because now they're just like, look at these Trump supporters who do this. And like I mentioned, the ringleader's not a Trump supporter, but that's not going to land on, say, Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
These people are convinced that this is a Trump like group that is going to try to kidnap this governor, and they're not. And when you see that the other side is planning things like this, at least perceive that the other side is planning things like this, that also emboldens you to be like, well, if they're gonna do it, we can't just let them do this, So I feel like this information is actually going to be huge on especially on Twitter. I bring up Twitter a lot because Twitter is the left-leaning one, and you got Facebook, which is the right-leaning one. And we make fun of both of them because they're both stupid. But when you see the other base doing this, and it's going to escalate itself, and this is going to be a weird comparison to make. But think about it's the Cold War, if you want to think about it like that, where they don't want to bomb the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they think that the other side is going to bomb them, so they're going to keep ramping up until these liberals put nuclear weapons in Cuba, and the Facebook dads put nuclear weapons in Turkey, and we're all scared.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week with the rise of armed conflict and the support of it amongst American voters. And I definitely see this as a catalyst for a lot of that political violence.
I feel like, and I'm going to go back to the left side again, this almost feels like justification. If you're, as an excuse, I don't mean like this justifies violence. There is no means to an end that should end with violence here. But I feel like if you are a liberal and you are misinformed on this, and you see this, and you're already like one of the 41% left, 44% Republicans that support violence, and you see this, you're like, holy shit, we can't let this happen. And even if it's not right, it's still going to drive people out to these lengths.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost this event, which is crazy because, like I mentioned, this guy, the ringleader, doesn't really have a political side. He's an anarchist and he's an idiot. But this, I don't want to say bystander, but this like politically independent person is now stirring up both parties because they're both like worried about the other side.
Yeah. All I'm gonna say is the Republicans have more guns, and we have the right to be afraid. Because the anarchists were the catalyst for this. But you're going to tell me there isn't at least one Republican who didn't think about shooting the governor of Michigan?
Oh, no.
How many of them were standing outside her house with guns 24/7? If it wasn't the anarchist who did it, the conservatives would have come to it eventually.
Maybe come to it eventually. You mentioned how many people thought about shooting this governor. There's a lot of people who hate a lot of people, especially in our country. Like Trump, for instance. There's probably a lot of people that thought about that.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm not going to say they thought about causing harm to the president, because that would get us put on a watch list probably, if I said that.
Probably already on one.
That's fine. Hey, more viewers, you know. But it's just such a strange event at such a bad time. Like if this happened 2 years ago, it's this event that everyone looks back and just says, "What the hell was that?" You know. But at this point, we're like 20 days out from the election, like 22, I believe,
Something
or so,
like that.
and it happens now. Now that we're starting to get politically stirred up for the election, this big event happens that causes another huge divide, like more erosion in that gap between Democrats and Republicans. And it definitely hurts that it happens at such a bad time, you know? Because, like I said, if it happens 2 or 3 years ago, we kind of forget about it by now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's brought up in passing if it was 2 or 3 years ago to be like, look at these people, you know? But right now is the worst time for this. Or I guess as we get closer to election too. But I agree with you. These guys are terrorists. They should be put away for good.
I think it's interesting now that I'm thinking about it. You know, you said if it was 2 years ago, we would have just forgotten about it. I feel like if this happened 2 years ago, these people would have not been called terrorists.
You think not?
No, I think they're only being charged as terrorists right now because of the political climate.
I feel like they'd be charged as terrorists because it's a government official. Like if they're planning to kidnap like you, I don't really think they'd be labeled terrorists. But like this is they're targeting like the government. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to go that route, I think the argument we should be talking about is whether or not to call these men a militia or like a gang.
They're terrorists.
Yeah, that they're terrorists.
That's all you need to know.
The people on Twitter and Facebook are like, these men are called a militia, but if it was this group, they would be like a gang. You know what I mean?
You got to remember though, like it's a Democratic governor. When Pelosi and Trump were arguing a couple years ago about stuff, Trump would publicly post her travel itineraries and to make her cancel her trips. She either went on the trips and put her life in danger, or she canceled the trips. You know, so I don't think a Trump administration, if he had any actual sway with the thing, and he could brush it under the rug 2 years ago, not terrorist. Because it doesn't fit with his
Well, I don't think
marketing.
He would be brushing it under the rug. You know what I mean? Because I mentioned earlier, these people are not with Trump.
No, but that doesn't change the fact that they're white. And that takes away from him saying Islamic radical terrorist.
I guess.
You know, it doesn't fit his or the conservative narrative.
Right.
You know, I think if this happened 2 years ago, it would not have been as big of a deal. I don't think you would have seen these men charged as terrorists. I think you would have seen them charged with lesser crimes.
Treason. Cut them off. Kill them.
Execution. Guillotine.
Throw them in the guillotine. The national razor of France. Put them in it.
What a time to be alive.
Well, now we're back in the Revolution, the French Revolution.
Oh.
A simpler time where I could just be killed instead of anything else.
I mean, hey, we do have a similar wealth gap to France during the French Revolution right now.
Is that so?
We do.
I think our standards of living are a bit better, though.
Yes.
Just a little bit.
Yes.
Marie Antoinette. We could fill an entire podcast with stories about the French Revolution, huh?
I would never want to.
You never want to?
No.
You wouldn't want to talk about Madame Deficit?
No.
And her hair that was a boat?
No.
No? Alright, then how about instead of moving to the French Revolution, we move on to voter suppression.
Wild time.
Wild time. So, I believe you brought up this topic out of the news in Texas, where they are using one drop-in box.
Yeah, so Texas passed a law allowing for one drop-in box only for these votes within a certain area, and then their courts struck that down, and so now they are allowed to have more than one. But the tactic is, it's voter suppression, because the areas that need more than one voter box are heavily populated areas. Cities. And cities in Texas specifically are especially minority-based. African American and Latinos make up a large portion of Texas's cities, not the rural parts. So when they say that, it disproportionately affects these Latino and African American voters who coincidentally also tend to vote for Democrats. And this is just one strain of this type of voter suppression we see. Even here in Ohio, where we're recording our podcast, our Board of Elections tried to create drop-off boxes for other parts of the city. So we're in Youngstown, we have a drop-off box here, but they also wanted to put a drop-off box all the way out in the country. By those areas, put one in almost every single city if they could. Boardman, Poland, all our local cities. And we were told no. So now, if you don't live in Youngstown, you have to drive all the way to Youngstown to drop off your ballot if you're afraid it won't make it through the mail in time. Kentucky, we saw in the primary that they cut the number of polling locations last minute, and all of the polling locations that were cut were in black communities to disproportionately affect those voters in the primaries, and we're probably going to see those locations similar now. There was a complaint I saw in North Carolina, did the same thing with cutting down on polling locations. And that disproportionately affects the African American community there too. So I think voter suppression is alive and well this election, and it's very scary to see.
I feel like you mentioned earlier with the cities, and you mentioned in Texas that they're mostly minority based. I feel like cities in general are mostly Democratic. So obviously cutting away the drop boxes from a city is impactful on an election. It almost feels like gerrymandering to me, you know what I mean? Where it's like, this is this political strategy. And gerrymandering is illegal, to my knowledge.
Depends on your state.
Depends on the state? Okay.
Depends on the state and depends on the level. Ohio has only half gerrymandering illegal. I don't remember if it's the state legislature or the national legislature, but one of those gerrymandering is illegal, and then one of them it's fine. I don't remember which is which.
I don't really see, and you probably know this better, how would national gerrymandering work in a state if it's based off of the state vote tally?
So
it would obviously change, like, the map, you know what I mean? Like, let's say we have 3 counties.
Okay.
And in the state election, they're obviously equally split if gerrymandering is illegal at the state level. In the national level, it changes the county shape still, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how would that affect the national election?
So there is no gerrymandering on the national election. Those only impact local elections, and they impact congressional seats. Election laws are within states. So it doesn't really have an effect.
Yeah.
Because the popular vote in a state wins, the Electoral College. But, just to talk about the Electoral College for a quick second, you could claim that the Electoral College is a form of gerrymandering also. Because the way the Electoral College is calculated is it gives 2 votes per senator and then 1 vote per
House of Representatives.
Yeah. Yeah, so in Wyoming you get 3 votes, even though you only have enough population to get 1 vote in the House of Representatives. So if you do the math, somebody's vote in Wyoming is worth more in a presidential election than somebody's individual vote in California. Because 2 votes for the entire state of California compared to 2 votes for the entire state of Wyoming. It doesn't work out.
In the Senate, yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like, in my mind, I like the Electoral College as an idea. I feel like the House of Representatives is not scaled enough for today's environment. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm okay with the 2 senators per state, right? Because that, like, the equality thing, which is like, but I feel like we don't have enough in the House of Representatives towards the higher end, like California and Texas and Florida. I feel like they have a little less of the House of Republicans, not anymore, House of Representatives than they probably should.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's scaled up enough. And the main reason I'm okay with this Electoral College is because we really don't have a popular vote. I mean, what was it, 55.5% of voters that could vote voted in 2016, and that's barely half.
Mm-hmm.
So is it really the popular vote if 45% of voters didn't vote? So I feel like that's kind of where the Electoral College comes into play, in a way.
See, I would disagree. You know, if you look at like what the founders intended for the Electoral College, it wasn't great. The idea was that the Electoral College would be used to stop voters from selecting the wrong candidates. So like it wasn't built properly. Um, it was built on slave mentality because the Southerners would count 3/5 of their slaves for their population totals, increasing their electoral college votes, and then using those electoral college votes to pick a president that was pro-slavery. So it was a complete system based off of rigging and keeping the power within 10% of white straight men. That was the electoral college goal. And then it evolved, and now the Electoral College's goal is to make sure every state is represented. Well, if you're in California and you're a Republican, you're not being represented in a presidential election. If you're a Democrat in Wyoming, your vote isn't being represented in a presidential election. So like I don't think it's works anymore. It's not a system that we should be able to use. It's just has a bunch of issues.
That kind of goes back to what I said with the scaling being all scuffed up. I feel like it does need an update. I mean, when it comes to the Constitution, I'm a Republican. I believe in the Constitution. I still believe we need to give it the polish. I don't think we need to overhaul it, but I think we do need to give it the polish. Like, for instance, all men are created equal was written when there were slaves. So obviously we kind of have to change that. We have to polish it all out. So, and I feel like the Electoral College is kind of a hard thing to do that with because it's surrounded by this Fort Knox of constitutionality where it's almost impossible to stop this. And there's let's see if I can get this name right. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact,
Yes.
which is this compact, this agreement that basically states that when when a bunch of states sign it, enough to swing the Electoral College, which would be like 270, whatever, 271 would be signed on that bill. If enough states are on that bill to pass that bill to control the Electoral College, it goes into effect. And what the bill basically just says is they will vote for the state that gets the most popular vote nationwide. So, like, if I got 1,000,000 votes and you got 30 votes in the election, which would probably be realistic, the states that were in this Navico-Interco compact would vote for me.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that sounds great on paper, right? If you're in, like you mentioned, a Republican in California, if you're a Democrat in California, you're probably okay with this, right? But if you are on the losing side of this, in a state that voted mostly, like let's say Wyoming, if you're a Republican in Wyoming, Wyoming is red, very red. And Wyoming is not a part of this interstate compact, but if they were a part of the interstate compact and they voted for the Democratic person who received the majority of the votes nationwide, that feels really bad for those state voters in Wyoming who came out to vote, and then they voted in state, and in their state, we'll say Trump and Biden because it's easy. Trump obliterated Biden in Wyoming because it's Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
But if Wyoming just turned around and was like, okay, but Biden got the most votes nationwide, so we're voting for Biden, that probably wouldn't sit well with a lot of people, especially these typical, like the conservative constitutionalists who support the Electoral College. They'll probably immediately slam their state legislature to go to the Supreme Court, and they would, and it would be a whole hubbub.
Yes.
I just feel like we need to update the Electoral College a bit. I don't feel like it should be abolished. We're never going to be able to fully abolish it. And I feel like the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is an interesting idea, but we'll see if it lands, because it will go to the Supreme Court if it goes through.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. It is going to go to the Supreme Court, so I don't think it's going to work. But the example you used of like Wyoming, you have to look at the states who've signed it.
Right. Wyoming did not
Only
sign it.
only
Obviously.
Democrat states have signed it.
Right.
Because Democrats are the ones that are being disproportionately affected by the Electoral College. Because the Republicans are okay with election rigging. Because they like getting those extra Electoral College votes from Wyoming, even though they shouldn't. They like the fact that California has less power than Wyoming does because of those 2 senators per vote. They like that idea. So they don't care. So only the Democrats have been voting for this. And if you look at presidential elections, Trump didn't win the popular vote in 2016. George Bush didn't win the popular vote in 2000. If you look at the past 20 years of elections, the Democrats have won the popular vote every single election except for one in 2004. Over the last 20 years, Democrats have won the popular vote every time, yet the Republican has been president now for 12 out of those 20 years. How does that make any sense?
I mentioned this earlier. I don't like the idea of this popular vote tally when we're voting a couple percent above half of our voters, right?
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want to vote, isn't that your vote? If you don't like either candidate, isn't that who you are supporting?
I think that's a different topic or debate we can get into is abstaining a vote. Because people out there, especially voters that lose the election, right? Like if Trump this election loses, they're going to blame these non-voters for not voting.
Mm-hmm.
So is that really your vote? I mean, obviously you can argue, yeah, that's your vote.
Well,
and I agree with you if that is your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't need a say in the election, or you don't want to say in the election, you don't have to have one. And even though people will be like, it's your your civil right to vote. You don't have to.
No.
Where was I going with this?
So you didn't want you like the Electoral College because the majority of people don't, or there's a large portion of people who don't
feel like
vote.
It would be a good fail-safe if we updated it for the modern age, because the elector...
But that's the thing, though. We shouldn't have an electoral fail-safe. If the people vote for somebody, they should be president. There shouldn't be a fail-safe. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, this many people didn't vote, therefore we need to choose this candidate. You know, we shouldn't have that. If that's the person who wins the most votes, that should be the president.
And my problem with this is, obviously I'm Republican, and I'm like, oh, rural states, woo, I love Wyoming or something, even if Wyoming isn't really real.
Yeah, it's not.
But like, if that was the case, then why would someone like Trump need to ever campaign in Wyoming then?
But here's the thing. So people talk about the campaign cycle. So because of the campaign cycle and the way the Electoral College is built now, Democrats campaign in Democrat states for fundraising, and then they campaign in swing states. Republicans campaign in Republican states,
right,
and then they campaign in the swing states. If you're a swing state, you're going to get your vote heard. But if you're in a Republican state, you're never even going to get to see Joe Biden. All right? Now, in a popular vote system, the way that's going to work is people are going to have to start visiting population centers. All right? So if we move the vote to a population center, you're going to start seeing campaigns shift away from state by state, and you're going to see it to city by city. So, you know, Joe Biden's campaign strategy isn't going to be, oh, let's do Ohio, Pennsylvania, blah, blah, blah. You're going to see him do Pittsburgh, and then let's do a road trip from Pittsburgh to Philly, and let's do that road trip to Atlantic City, and then I'm going to go down into Richmond, and then I'm going to go, you know, so they're going to start doing these bus tours. The moral of the story here is that even under the Electoral College system, states are being left out. And under the popular vote system, states and some people are going to be left out. The question is, are we going to leave these people out and then ignore their votes? Or are we going to leave them out and then still count the votes?
I feel like you're right. You have that point on the Electoral College. Not on the Electoral College, but on the... they would still be ignoring Wyoming. But if I'm in Wyoming, with the Electoral College, my vote feels like it has impact. You know what I mean?
But it shouldn't have more impact than somebody else's.
But if I was in Wyoming, I'm not sure the exact population of Wyoming, like 12 probably, but
5 people.
5 people.
If you are from Wyoming and dislike this video,
3 of them are the representatives in the Electoral College, and the other 2 are the voters, right? But if I'm in Wyoming and I'm one of these 12 people who votes for my candidate, I feel like I'm pointless. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Because like a California house might have more votes than all of me. I guess that's not. I'm just using hyperbole, of course.
But your vote's still worthless because your state's always going to vote Republican. If I'm a Democrat in Wyoming, my vote is still worthless.
Wyoming's pretty worthless, isn't it?
Totally.
Let's hope we're not super popular one day.
And then this comes back to
this
bite
comes
us.
back, and we're gonna get canceled by Wyoming.
Damn. If you guys see Dick Cheney, tell him I hope his heart's okay.
If you guys see Wyoming, tell us that Wyoming's real. Because
it's probably not. But yeah, this whole Electoral College thing got started on voter suppression. Very real thing. Republicans bad.
Yeah. Everyone's bad.
They're trying to take the vote away. So get your votes in and make sure they count because you might get voter suppressed out of it.
I might be getting voter suppressed out of it. I don't know if
you probably will.
Thanks, YSU.
Yep.
I sent a letter.
Oh, to complain?
No, to just a family member, right?
Mm-hmm.
They haven't gotten it yet. I sent it like 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure YSU just lost it.
Probably.
Come on, man. I hate colleges.
Oh, for sure.
But our last topic, conspiracy, huh?
Yep.
With Q Anonymous and the likes.
So we bring up this topic because Facebook today has banned, or this week, not today, banned QAnon, or QAnon, whatever you call it. They banned it because, it's a fake.
Dumb.
It's dumb, stupid. And, yeah. So we, brought that up because these social media giants have been doing a lot of fact-checking and been trying to strike down on these conspiracy theories, and there are a lot of them. Russians are peddling some of them to interfere in our elections. Chinese doing the same. Different candidates, of course. The Chinese for Biden and the Russians for Trump. It's just an interesting time to be alive. A lot of conspiracy theories.
And honestly, I feel like Facebook banning QAnon is not necessarily a bad idea, but probably the wrong idea for the time. Because now, this group that constantly believes, like, they're being targeted by the media, that, like, all these conspiracy theories, this emboldens that.
Yes.
Because now these people that are like, oh, the big Facebook wants to shut us up, and they shut them up. So it almost feels like that they're not justified. These people are insane at some points, but this kind of gives a tiny bit of truth to their idea that they might be targeted, and with that little bit of truth, they're gonna be like, all of our things are true.
Yeah.
This, and this is because of Facebook banning us on Facebook. I was gonna say Facebook banning us on Twitter.
Close enough.
Yeah, same thing. Who cares? But it's just almost wild how spun up these conspiracy theories are. And then one small event, like QAnon being banned, because QAnon has been a thing since 2015, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously started on 4chan
It's where it all starts, yeah.
But it happens now. And I mentioned this with the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer, this happens now. Right before the election's about to start. The big meat of the election's coming up. And all this happens in succession. And it's just QAnon nobody cared about 2 years ago. And I know because I was there and nobody cared about QAnon. It's here now and everyone cares about it. And it's almost crazy to the degree that QAnon blew up. I wish our channel could blow up like that did.
Amen.
Because they were 2 years ago, they were just they were a conspiracy theory in themselves. This mythical group that doesn't exist, but does exist. Because it goes off of this man named Q, which imagine being named a letter. What a guy.
My uncle was named V.
That's still pretty funny. You have 26 letters to work with, and you choose one of them.
Yep, his name is V. Douglas Anderson, and so he goes by Doug
Oh no.
because he doesn't want to go by V.
But like, it's just this conspiracy theory thing that blows up is just mind-boggling to the degree which it's grown to now. And like, if you go to Twitter and type in the letter Q, the first result's
Yeah.
probably QAnon, which is just so insane how fast it came out of nowhere.
And like, if you do any research into it, you can disprove
Oh,
the
right.
theory with its own theory.
Yeah.
You know, there's like contradicting statements within their own theory. Personally, I'm a bit on the fence with this one. Because like, as you say, you're right. You know, when we ban these conspiracy theories, you know, it emboldens them. QAnon and me are definitely separated on this kind of ideology because it was started with anti-Semitic intentions.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any room anywhere for anything
Nope.
anti-Semitic. You know, so I don't even want to hear it because I know where its roots come from and I know the dangers of that. So like I'm okay, you know, with the regulation and banning of it because it's anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
You know, other conspiracy theories maybe not because it does embolden them once they do get banned. But this one I might have to pull a special case because of the anti-Semitic roots.
I get what you're saying. I mean, and I agree with you on the idea that there is no place for hate, especially on social media, because of what it can do to people. But, and I'm not saying that I necessarily agree or disagree with QAnon being banned. These people probably should have been banned, right?
Probably.
But what I'm disagreeing with is the timing of it.
Yes.
I'm saying it's a very bad time to ban QAnon. It's right now. Like, they should have did it a year ago or 2 years ago. Because it was still anti-Semitic then, right?
Yes.
But now that election cycle's coming up, and now that it has sort of the spotlight, banning it now, I feel, is just a terrible idea.
So just for some clarification for people at home, QAnon believes that, you know, the elites, the politicians, and all these
big pharma.
Yeah, big pharma, Hollywood, they're using children's blood to make themselves forever young. More or less is what it is. However, if you look back at the roots of this theory, the first group that used children's blood to make themselves powerful and forever young were the Jews during the Dark Ages, according to all the anti-Semitic comments and stuff. And then another thing that is commonly said about the Jews is that they are rich and powerful and control everything behind the scenes, which is also, you know, not true.
Right.
But then you start putting those puzzle pieces together. You have a rich and powerful elite working behind the corner, using children's blood to make themselves forever young. And who did they learn it from? They learned it from the Jews. You know, so that's where the theory comes from, just so you're aware. But I do agree, this is a very interesting time for this to come out. And the question is, who is Facebook benefiting with this? Because by banning it, they become emboldened. And Facebook is a big company, and they do like their Trump tax cuts. You know, but at the same time, they also pretend to be liberal to the American public. You know, Facebook jail and all these things that drives the conservatives crazy. You know, so the question is, who does this benefit in the last 20 days of this election?
No one. I can't think of who it would, outside of, like, because we mentioned that Facebook is obviously conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And QAnon is this far gone, like, I don't even want to say far right to put them on the spectrum, but this out there group, you know what I mean? But, oh, I don't like that smile.
See, I think it affects Trump.
That's what to say. I was about to get to it. I was like, because if you're a conservative group, right, and you don't agree with QAnon, but if you see, like, these people get banned from the site, you obviously don't do research into it and see, like, why. You just see that this big group has been banned from the site. That kind of might stir this fear within your little circle, this conservative circle, that what if we're next? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then that almost kind of feeds into Trump's hero complex, where this is now a problem that not necessarily he's created, but a problem he can solve. And it almost makes these conservative groups think we need more Trump.
And specifically on QAnon, from what I've read and understand in a lot of these groups that it circulates, is Trump is the savior against these child rapists and murderers
that use the blood of
yeah,
children.
he knew about it. Bill Clinton and the Democrats used Jeffrey Epstein, to get all these children blood, and then Trump met Jeffrey Epstein a couple times, and now Trump knows all the secrets, and he's trying to stop it. He's the savior. And I've seen that a lot too.
Ridiculous, man.
Isn't it?
Using children's blood. If they use children's blood to make them eternally young, why do they die?
Here's my thing. If this was an actually real theory, we would be pumping Joe Biden full of children's blood to get him through all of these debates in this last minute of the campaign trail.
What if we are?
Dun dun dun!
What if Joe Biden
is
Hollywood
Q?
elite?
What if Joe Biden is Q?
Oh my god. The letter Q. It's so scary.
And he learned all about it at Hillary Clinton's Pizzagate.
Pizzagate. Oh, that's a story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I almost forgot about that.
And it also occurred, going back to your timing point, Pizzagate occurred about 20 days before the election. And this QAnon band has also appeared about 20 days before the election. Is that a conspiracy theory?
Yes.
Oh.
Speaking of before the election, somebody, I don't remember who it was, some journalist came out today, I think it was, and said, I have Hillary Clinton's emails, and I'm going to release them before the election. Like, what?
They were already released before the 2016
also,
election.
Who cares anymore? Obviously,
the conservatives do.
Yeah, because, this is the 2016 thing, and, of course, if you're rational now, you don't care. Hillary Clinton's pretty much gone, for all our purposes, right?
Although she has a podcast and it's more popular than ours.
Wow, who would have guessed that a very influential figure in politics would have a larger podcast than two of us? That I work at Walmart, and I'm going to be working at Chick-fil-A soon. But what voice do I have compared to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton?
Legends.
We'll get there. That's our goal.
To get
more popular than Clinton.
Legends.
But yeah, I think the big problem with this QAnon thing is just it's been around forever and it's come back, and now we've been talking about the timing for the past 10 minutes. It's just such a bad time to do it. Facebook knew about this group years ago. Why not do it then? Why now? Because I think these people are a bunch of lunatics.
Yeah, for sure.
But now, they've been targeted. So now they're going to get riled up. Now they're going to take to, not Facebook, they're banned on Facebook, huh?
Go back to 4chan.
Go back to 4chan. And stir up these 4chan people. Some of these 4chan people. It's not all 4chan people are okay, but listen to this. Most 4chan people are not, anti-Semitic. They're just stupid. And some of them are hella smart. Were you in the know for the Shia LaBeouf news cycle? Where he would do the "they would not divide us" thing?
Mm-hmm.
So originally Shia LaBeouf had a camera somewhere in New York City, and it would just run for 4 years, and he would show up every day to be like, President Trump will not divide us, and we'll have people there, right? That got shut down because whatever. Then what order was it in? He hung up a flag. He hung up a flag in some place, right? And all you could see was this flag in the sky. And in 13 hours, 4chan found the flag and took it down, right? That's crazy. And then the next one was they put it on a roof of a building. In 23 hours, they found the building, found the roof, and got up there on that roof somehow. But were stupid and could not break the zip ties on the flag. So they left. And also, I want to mention about that one, they were trying to devise drones to, spit paint on this flag, right? And then the craziest one, right? In 13 hours, Shia LaBeouf, not even him, not even his house, put his flag on a wall, with a camera on the flag on the wall. It'd be the equivalent of like this wall here. If there's a flag on that wall, I had a camera on it, right?
For those of you at home, it's just a blank wall.
Yeah. 13 hours, they found this wall, they found this house, they found the flag. They didn't do anything, obviously, because they're just idiots, they're not criminals. But they found everything about this house. They could see this flag through a window. And in 13 hours, they found on the planet a flag on a blank wall. These are the same people who, like, ask, like, did anyone else eat glue as a kid? Not just me. These people are ridiculous. And this was...
They're trolls. I'm sure some of those people shared the QAnon stuff because they thought it was a joke, and then eventually got into the hands of people who didn't think it was a joke.
It's like, and that reminds me of like the iPhone massacre. Remember that?
Yeah.
Where 4chan spread this like fake news advert that like you can charge your phone in the microwaves, and if you do that, it blows up. So, don't do that. If I condone doing that, would I be labeled a terrorist?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Are you just gonna come here and do it yourself?
Maybe.
Oh.
Let's see. So far in this podcast, you've said you're gonna win more votes than me in an election. You've promised to shoot me.
10 votes.
You've promised to arrest me. And
I didn't promise that you should. I said hypothetically speaking, if I shot you. I'm saying hypothetically, I shot you. And I shot you in this booth. This podcast booth. Me having shot you now has one choice, but to leave. I return the key to the booth and leave the building after I hypothetically have shot you. Would that make me a terrorist?
Maybe.
You're technically a government official, so if I did inflict harm upon you, I would be a terrorist.
But I'm a Democrat.
Oh, then I'm a martyr.
Exactly.
Anyways, this is a good episode. It was fun.
Yeah.
We talked about a couple things interesting.
Make sure you get your vote in. Don't let the voter suppression get you. Don't believe in conspiracy theories.
Unless they're funny.
Unless they're funny. I'm a big flat earther. Not really, but
I'm a fan of square earth.
Don't watch the next debate because it's not going to happen. And then, what else did we talk about?
Don't get kidnapped by...
Yeah, don't get kidnapped.
Don't get kidnapped. That's not good. If you were kidnapped, it would not be terrorism because you're not a government official, unless Secretary of State, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is watching this, and if she is, we're gonna beat her channel in subscribers.
Hillary, I love you. You're
yeah,
the greatest.
you do. I know
love
you do.
Hillary Clinton.
I know
She's
you
great.
do. Maybe that's how we get subs. We just suck up to Hillary Clinton.
One can dream.
What, that we get a lot of subs that you can suck up to Hillary Clinton?
Both.
Anyways, this is Austin.
This is Carson.
And thank you for joining us on this Saturday afternoon.